Sound. Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Safety Culture Solutions, brought to you by Safety Culture Strategies. Do us a favor, make sure to like us and share us and subscribe. Help pass the word of how we assist organizations observing and learning about positive safety culture solutions. We've had the pleasure, amazing talent, leaders of industry, presidents, CEOs, the list goes on, that have been gracious enough to offer their time to be part of our podcast. This week, I am thrilled to have with us Dr. Jeffrey Magee. He's been called one of today's leading leadership and marketing strategists, no joke. And under Jeffrey Magee LLC, he works with C-suite, business leaders, military generals, and CEO to CEO peer groups across America. He is a certified board executive, CBE, certified speaking professional, CSP, certified management consultant, CMC, and a certified professional direct marketer, PDM. Jeff is the author of more than 20 leadership, performance, and sales books that have transcribed into multiple languages, including 4 bestsellers. His sales training handbook by McGraw-Hill was an instant bestseller, has been transcribed into more than 20 languages. Your Trajectory Code, released in 2015 by John Wiley, is also a bestseller. Dr. Magee is also the publisher of Performance 360 magazine, a quarterly success achievement publication with editorial contributions from the world's leading personalities. Examples include Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, and the Dali Lama. His signature managerial leadership engagement development series, the Leadership Academy of Excellence, is utilized by many of the Fortune 500 firms, the Army National Guard, Federal Reserve, farm credit banks, as well as entrepreneurial business owners today at the C-suite level, and an integral engagement management leadership effective series with senior leaders. Dr. Magee, I'm thrilled to have you with us. Obviously, when we talk about leadership and ways for people to truly get what it takes at that C-suite level, you're pretty much in a league of your own, sir.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and thank you for the opportunity to stop in and talk about leadership from an organizational and personal perspective, and specifically how that relates to the issue of safety.
And so kind of get things queued up, because you literally have done this, well, around the world in different levels. You're on the road a lot. So a topic that is starting to gain more traction, because you've heard of the gray hair, in my case, the white-haired tsunami. There's a lot of leaders that are approaching retirement or have retired, and they know it's coming within 12 to 18 months and maybe less. So what do you view as some of the skill sets for the leaders of tomorrow?
Yeah, great question. Let's back this clock up 20 years ago, and it doesn't matter what the dateline is of today or when someone's viewing this in the future. But 20 years ago, I sat down with a massive organization here in the United States that has tens upon tens of thousands of individuals in management and leadership roles. And the survey that they did internally across the U.S. was that 20 years ago, in the next 10-year window, roughly 30% of everyone in leadership roles would be retiring from that organization, an industry which has a massive influence on our entire society. Then what's interesting is that a year 11 through year 20, roughly another 32% of all the people in managerial leadership roles would be retiring. So over this 20-year window, 60% of that DNA that's in management leadership roles would be gone from the organization. Well, today we're at that 20-year window and seeing the effects of that. So I just use those numbers to kind of influence any of our viewers' mindsets, looking inward to your own organization. Whether in your organization or industry, you are right, Michael, where you just indicated, a lot of people getting ready to retire, or in your organization, if you've just had this or will have this. The reality is this: when you look at the knowledge set that builds a person, there actually is a formula I created years ago called the Player Capability Index Model. And if any of your viewers want a copy of that, just send an email into you or I, and I'll be more than happy to share that article. It's chronicled in a lot of my books. Your Trajectory Code, for example, talks about it in great detail. But there actually is a finite answer to that question. And so for the viewers, one more time, what's the DNA of these great leaders we're getting ready to lose? Well, if I were to break it into a formula, here's where it would start. It would start with the letter T for training. And any way you look at knowledge gain, for sake of this conversation, would be letter T. So whether in your industry there is formal or informal education, degrees or non-degrees, certifications or non-certifications, all of that would be the domain of T for training. And so knowledge is one of those elements that propels us to make the decisions we make, have the intuition we have, to be able to lead people, to be able to grow and develop people. So one's going to be that formal knowledge, informal knowledge track. Second is going to be the body of work experiences, and let's call that letter P for performance. How have you performed in the past? And even better yet, to letter P, is in the cumulative jobs you've had in your life, or if it's been your own organization, what sort of scorecard have you been using? That scorecard could be performance reviews, whether they're annually, quarterly, monthly, ongoing coaching conversations. What sort of scorecard in terms of a thorough real-time job description that details one's job area responsibility? So second way of looking at what grows us is going to be the tasks, duties, and responsibilities of each job along the way to grow us towards the leadership role that we have, or the senior most leadership role we have as we're ending our career. And the third, and there's a whole lot more, but the third one I'll give you for sake of this conversation is going to be, in essence, letter E for experiences. What are those experiences? You know, whether someone has military background in their pedigree, or they worked for a Fortune 1000 company in their pedigree, whether they went to an Ivy League school or a state school, whether they have vocational training in their background, blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, small business, large business, family business, nonprofit. Again, all of those experiences help us to understand how to, in essence, lead organizations and people to excellence. Do you have in your background such an experience portfolio of working with just people, period, that, diversity and inclusion is not an issue for you because it's your own DNA. I mean, again, in some places, we talk about diversity and inclusion as if it's just arrived on the planet. And I'm probably not going to make some friends with my next comment. But diversity and inclusion, if that's really a problem for you today as you're watching this podcast, two things. One, either you're actually the frickin' problem, go get a life and shut up until you have one, or you're hanging around a very small number of people that have just arrived on planet Earth because competition is going to kick your butt. That might have been a reality in the past. We might have needed to talk to it, teach to it, compliance to it in the past. But I'm a big believer, globally where I go, these are really not issues except for the people that make it an issue. And again, recently I spoke at an international leadership conference in the mountainous area of USA, of all places to have this conference, during COVID. And we had hundreds of people in the room of all ethnicities, of all gender. And there wasn't issues in that room because, again, not only did I participate in, I listened into. The problems are the people that make them one. Now, again, I just use that as an example, but you've asked a question in and of itself could be an entire podcast. So the DNA of leaders in the future, one, they have to have an academic brain. They have to have a practitioner's brain. They actually have had to have gotten their brain or their hands dirty. They have some calluses on their hand or their brain, and if not, shut up, sit down, move to the side, because you're causing trauma.
I like anytime I can get in the room with Dr. McGee. We've had the pleasure of breaking bread together and having coffee, and it's always a great conversation. Getting information from Jeffrey, like I told him before, is like getting a drink of water from a fire hose. And you're going to get a lot of stuff coming at you. I'm going to break off here real quick on the topic. One of the big fans, I know you as well, Jeffrey, is the Gallup surveys. They do a lot, and just like I really like data, it kind of gives you some population on what stuff looks like. They have a recent publication out in the last 30 days or so, kind of, sort of, and they're saying out of, you take these 10 people, one of them pretty much has that capability just naturally to be a great leader. But two more out of the 10, they do probably can get there with the right trajectory, as long as they have some great coaching and mentoring to aid them. But the other 7, not necessarily should that be their best career path, because candidly, it may not be the world's best fit.
Absolutely. There's a great book written years ago, and the book title is called On Followership. And I highly recommend that to any of our viewers today, especially if you're in a leadership role or you are aspiring into a leadership role. On leadership talked about those 7 people. Exactly. Not everyone wants to be a leader. There's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes what we do is we put people that are not equipped to be a leader and they don't have the desire and interest to be a leader, and we put them into those leadership roles, and then we get stressed when things don't work out the right way. So we have to look at it through the right lens. But let's talk about those 3 you did indicate. Again, whether it's the old element of, is it nurture or is it natural? I mean, is that one leader, were they born a leader or were they groomed into being one? And that's a debate for another day. But I would say the answer is yes, it's both. The 2, then we talk about growing into it. Again, if they have great mentors and great leaders to see what great leadership behaviors look like, then they can model those. And yes, we can train for that, and we can develop for that, and we can create all the gates to pass through to generate and create great leaders. Again, building into that self-accountability, personal accountability, systems of accountability, etc. So I buy into that. And so here's the disservice we do on the planet. Whether it's politics, regardless of your political view, whether it's religion, regardless of your religious views, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's profit, is that sometimes we actually hold organizations back from greatness, and we actually impede the development of the other human capital within the organization when we put people into leadership roles that they actually should never, ever have been put there. Because one, family-owned businesses, sometimes this is the challenge. We put people into leadership roles that they've never had to actually work and learn about those mental and physical calluses I referenced. We put people in these roles just because, or we have legacy employees. Maybe they're not family members, but you're the owner of the company, Mike, and I've worked and we've been around each other for 30 years. So yep. I get these, dual positions, even though I don't have the talent and the experience and the background to do a good job. Well, that holds back everyone else. So the math that you just shared is critically important in terms of how we onboard and look for future talent, how we look at career pathways of people in an organization, how we develop people. There's a lot of implications. And we could take that Gallup survey a little bit further if we really want to stress people out. A few years ago, Gallup did a more powerful survey than the one you just shared. And they surveyed thousands of businesses, which is uncharacteristic of Gallup, because Gallup typically actually surveys a smaller sampling. True. So thousands of businesses mean that's made up of tens of thousands of employees. So this is a massive survey. And what they found was 56% of the responders said they're basically disengaged or complacent today in the workplace. Yes. So that's leadership's role, to engage them, to invite them, to develop them, to empower them, to get them to take ownership and step in. And then you have phenomenal power going forward. But if you don't, then that means roughly half your organization's going through the motions, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. Then it found 15% of organizations are populated with people that are actively disengaged. Yes. These are people that live to complain for a living. Yes. And sometimes you turn on the news and you see them in roles that they never should have been in, whether it's business or community or politics, because again, they're undermining the future. They're doing the blame game. And sometimes that becomes their whole business. You have to pay attention. But if you do the math, 29% of that sampling are actively engaged. Yeah. So if I fixate on the 29%, that's who you want to make sure you're advertising to interview, to hire. Those are the ones you want to onboard. Those 29%ers are the ones you want to keep. The 29%ers are the ones that can be mentors and sponsors and advocates. And whether your organizational structure starts with leads, the supervisors, the managers, the directors, the vice presidents, et cetera, those are the ones you cultivate and grow upward, and it keeps you much more engaged and successful. Again, keep in mind that old adage, misery loves company. Well, if you bitch for a living, it's amazing how everyone around you loves to complain too. So misery loves company can also be success loves company. Hang out with successful people. And all of this has a safety implication. We haven't even talked about safety yet, Michael.
Exactly. Because Ray goes, well, you're talking about leaders. Well, forgive me. Duh. Another great book, we're comparing articles, and is by Tim O'Leary, not Timothy O'Leary, Workers, Warriors, Whiners, and Weasels. And the people in your organization fit in one of those dynamics, and people go, what? And so like that weasel, that's the ones who intentionally want to undermine your company. And candidly, Dr. Magee, as I'm preaching to the choir, that can spread like wildfire. Negativism can be so contagious in an organization.
Absolutely is. Yeah, and again, at the time we're recording this for the viewers that may come back on this from an archive standpoint, we're going through the middle of a global pandemic. Yeah. So, whose fault it is, set that to the side. Whether it's as severe as others say it is, doesn't matter, set that to the side. The reality, it has globally impacted business. Again, yes. if you talk to business leaders and owners, let's say 3 months before the pandemic hit, so whatever date and month and year that is on your calendar, and you talk to them about virtual employees or allowing people to work remotely or et cetera, most all leaders would have said exactly, no way. Within 4 months into the pandemic, massive numbers of people were working remotely and virtually and showing they were being more productive and profitable than they were before. And so now the reality is, coming out the backside of the pandemic, people are looking to reorganize. One of the largest law firms in America recently announced they're not renewing the leases on any of their commercial property in the United States. You have a major outdoor, sports company, REI, based in Washington State. Their CEO, she made comment early on during COVID that they were looking to downsize their campus of thousands of employees in Seattle area to no longer have to work in that office. And you see that track everywhere. So that comes back to the issue here. If we put it into a context of, safety, culture, solutions, mindset, again, if you're going to have someone who's writing the curriculum or compliance policies in your organization around safety issues, if you're going to have someone who's going to be the advocate in different business units, if you're going to have someone who's a leader in that environment, you need to make sure it's the 29 percenters. Again, people make the mistake of thinking culture is, the environmental health and safety team's responsibility. Well, at the end of the day, they own that. But the reality is safety is owned by everybody. If I was talking to you as the senior team and just to play a safety game, I'd say, what are some of your top concerns as the executive team to your business? And if you think about it, they would give me a pretty doggone good list for the whiteboard, as they say, behind you. But I'd come back and say, okay, but let me ask you, can I put something on this list that we might all overlook, but I bet you we all would agree is actually number one to that list factor, no matter what they had put up there, financial issues or growth issues or what have you. I bet you I got something on that safety list you all have forgotten. Let me ask you, is your number one concern every day employees come to work alive and they're able to go home at the end of the day alive? Would that be a number one concern? And what do you think they would say?
Yeah, they got to say yes, right? Because it's got to be in there.
Bingo.
You would hope.
And that's the safety. So again, safety, everyone owns it, and there's lots of ways to understand it. But I think sometimes we take our eye off of that one variable because we're so pressed to look at so many other factors. How do we make this a safe experience for our external customer or our internal constituents? How do we make this assembly line, more efficient, more profitable, more effective? Yes, and do it in a safe way. How do we, reconfigure the way people walk through our facility to make it more efficient? Yes, but how do we do it in a safe way, et cetera? So safety is a mindset of everyone. And then the other element of how I push my business clients is to look at any conversation, so safety as well as one, Mike, from the perspective of how do you turn us into a profit center? Perfect. See, I believe that the businesses of tomorrow that thrive have people on their teams that look at everything they do through the lens of revenue generation, profitability, more efficiency. And yesterday, that was only held by a small percentage of the people in the organization.
Perfect. And real quick, we're going to go to break because you're scratching one of my itches, because safety is one of the few things that you view it, how many people got hurt. Versus on the positive side, what value does safety bring to you? So ladies and gentlemen, don't go away. We're going to be right back, and we are going to open up the brain of Dr. Magee because he's got some great insight on what you need to be looking for your leadership team. And he's got 5 critical items he's going to be talking about. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Safety Culture Strategies provides world-class safety culture and safety program management consultative services for clients throughout the United States. Whether your company is pursuing Voluntary Protection Program STAR designation, ISO 45001 certification, or considering a comprehensive review of your current safety programs and processes, Safety Culture Strategies brings hands-on experience combined with a unique perspective that readily translates from senior management to task-level personnel. This collective skill set provides you with a very insightful health check of your overall safety management system that can also assist with reducing injuries and attrition, as well as increasing profitability. Safety Culture Strategies is also certified to provide Ziegler Institute employee engagement training and leadership coaching. When combined with established relationships with federal and state regulators, Safety Culture Strategies is unique uniquely positioned to assist the safety culture efforts of any company. For additional information, visit www.scstrat.com or call us at 702-780-1410. After all, every company has a safety culture, but is it the culture you want?
And we're back. We got Dr. Jeffy Magee with us. We'll bring him back up on screen and say howdy once again as we're coming out of commercial. And what resonates with me already, Jeffrey, is, as you know, I'm a hot rodder from way back, and I've worked with a lot of companies on some of their safety processes as well. One of the organizations, we'd never name names, very successful, the son-in-law kind of married into it. So I'd meet him at these national meetings, and so the dad's there, and so he's running, and so the son-in-law going, hey, right? So then the dad, how he came into the company, he retires and the son-in-law becomes the dude. And you saw their sales plummet. You saw their client interaction almost dissolve. Right? And he's literally, like that deer in the headlights. How could this have happened to us? Well, in my humble opinion, they kind of set him up for failure. Real quick, because with this towards the end of our show, I have had the opportunity, viewers, to sit in a room with Dr. Magee live. And you cannot bring enough notepads, bring spare ink pens, because he brings you a wealth of information. That's you absolutely, my pleasure, will benefit any leadership team. Talking about leadership, there's a king of a segue. You and I've chat before, now kind of refresh my brain, Jeffrey. I think you have identified there's 5 critical factors that are needed for leaders to truly be able to succeed. Did I capture that correctly?
You did perfect. So again, working in organizations over the past several decades, both from an employee standpoint, mid-level leadership standpoint, senior leadership and ownership role, as well as then looking at organizations I serve outwardly for the last several decades as I've developed these different training companies I've had and sold and been a part of. What I've recognized in any of those scenarios, there's 5 critical factors to building a successful organization, and therefore as the leader, 5 critical factors to leadership success. The first 3 are taught in any good business school in America, and the first 3 are probably encapsulated in a half a dozen management leadership books to any of you that are watching here if you have a stack of those books on your shelves. The difference is variable 4 and 5 are typically never discussed unless the person writing, teaching, presenting, coaching, mentoring you has actually ever signed in front of a payroll check. And that's a critical differentiator to being just survival mode company getting by and really thriving. So number 1 is strategy. If you write these down, successful businesses have to have a strategy, a game plan, a business plan. Any words you want to write down, folks, it's similar to the theme of what I'm giving to you. That's an A+ for the pop quiz. So what's your strategy? It's an amazing example. Go back to 2 months before the global pandemic. If I had a room full of executives and you're sitting in the room as a viewer right now, and I asked a question by show of hands, how many of you have a business plan, a game plan for this year? Almost every hand would have went up. Now, if I would have asked that same question of you in your office and your hand went up, I would have had an I got you with question number 2, because I would have said, perfect, swing around there in your chair on your computer and hit print on that strategy, that game plan, that business plan for this year, and let's talk about it. Because most people would have said, oh, oops, I really don't have one. And that's how, unfortunately, realistically, a lot of businesses actually work. We take whatever last year's game plan was and we simply pull it forward to the next year. And if our bosses are making us write it down, we may write it down a little bit, but we're not really getting serious. So number 1 is, do you have a serious game plan, strategy, business approach? That's 1, because it will drive number 2. Number 2 is going to be the word operations or operational. So what are all the operational systems, processes? What are all the operational checklists, to-dos, SOPs, KPIs that you need to be successful? Because 2 will reinforce 1. 1 will tell you what 2 needs to be. And if those 2 are out of alignment, then don't worry about 3, 4, and 5 because you're already screwed up. So 1 is strategy, 2 is ops, 3 is what we spend an obscene amount of money in this world is focusing on. 3 is behaviors. Meaning, are we training people to be compliant? Are we training people to have best practice human capital interaction capabilities? We talk about conflict and confrontation resolution skills, or first-time leadership skills for first-time line supervisors. I mean, you've seen all the titled workshops that are out there. But that's all about number 3, training people to do what we need them to do, how we need them to do it, when we need them to do it. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So a lot of organizations may say, okay, Dr. Magee, we're doing 1, 2, and 3, but we're not really growing the way we would like to. What's happening? It's probably because of, in essence, 4 and 5 are missing. 4, and this is where you won't find it in books or you won't hear it out of someone's mouth unless they have mental and physical calluses that I talked about before. Number 4 is going to be the word execution. At the end of the day, someone has to shut up and do the work. I mean, Margaret Thatcher had a great line about socialism. At the end of the day, eventually you will run out of everyone else's money. And that's why it's never worked anywhere on the planet. Same thing in a business. At the end of the day, you've got to have the right people in the right place doing the right thing, and that's execution. If people freely come in and take ownership and they're doing their job and don't have to say, I need you to do this, or I need you to stay late, or I need you to come in early, people have evolved to level 4. And level 5 of the 5 critical factors I've recognized have to be present for peak performing businesses is the word accountability. And the word accountability has subset answers after that. So here's how you know if your business or business unit is humming at peak performance. The first level of accountability is going to be self-accountability. If people themselves assume responsibility, have the discipline, the work ethic, the dedication to hold themselves accountable, then you know you're probably on the track for the most efficient running organization you'll be a part of. Second level accountability is going to be systems, which goes back to the word ops. Do you have operational systems or tools in place that if I'm your employee and I want to hold myself accountable, the systems will also be there to help to hold me accountable? Third level of accountability then is going to be peer. Do we have an environment and culture by which people hold themselves accountable, hold each other accountable, have each other's back? We're not tossing anyone under the bus, but we've got each other's back and we hold each other accountable. So you and I know, hey, don't let down your partner. Fourth level of accountability, then if you do have an external customer, does that external customer providing you feedback? Do you have feedback loops to know are you selling and living up to your brand promise? Can you become more efficient? So if the 5 levels of critical success is strategy, ops, behavior, execution, accountability, and of accountability, you then have 5 levels. You have self, you have systems, you have in essence peer, you have customer, and then number 5 would be the word boss, whatever that means. So you can reverse the paradigm. If you're working in an organization where you, the boss, the business owner, the C-suite, are like you've got to be there every day to hold people accountable, your system's screwed up because you're starting at number 5 on the word accountability when you should be at number 1, which is personal. So great question. That's my 5 at 5.
Wow, I absolutely love it. And real quick, I have one of my neighbors was getting his pool redone, right? Do some resurfacing. So he told me the name of the company, and I go to Yelp and different. So there's a feedback on there, Jeffrey, and this individual had contacted this company. We won't name names, and he said, "Well, we'll get back to you within a week before a quote." It didn't happen. So he contacted them, provided his information yet again. Didn't happen. This went on for about 3 months. So this potential customer sends a screamer about that big into the review, right? Gave him, if he could have given him -10, I think he would. Okay, all the leaders who are joining us today, hold on to your desk, take a deep breath. The owner, in lieu of, if you was to say yourself, Dr. Magee, thank you for the opportunity. We totally apologize. We're a better organization. I personal guarantee I'm going to call you within 48 hours. I want to buy you lunch. Just providing us this opportunity to clarify what we do.
Brilliant.
Evidently, he did not sit in one of your classes because the owner's response was this long. It's going off the screen. You can see how long it is. And he goes, well, you just don't understand how busy we are. We don't have time to remember everybody's name, right? And so I'm going, where is some of this orientation? Now, his work as a pool guy repair isn't too bad, but that customer service, that customer relationship, a couple of things we've touched on this, and that's why I tell everybody, when you watch this, make sure you take lots of notes. You may rewind pieces of it. So, and we touched a little bit earlier we talked about the leadership. What about at the supervisory level? Because to me, that's as integral as anything, Jeffrey, because you got the senior team, you got the people, the task level, really helping grind everything out, ensuring success and quality and customer satisfaction. What do you look for in that supervisor, kind of that middle role, if you will, of what's really important for them?
Great answer. So in organizational dynamics in a business, we use a pyramid model that's older than all of us combined. And so let me default to that to answer your question so I can give our our audience today not only the thought, but a visual. If you think about a triangle and you divide that into 3 levels with 2 horizontal lines, the top of that pyramid is typically where the senior leadership is, however you define that in your organization. And so if you were to put, in essence, senior leadership at the top of that triangle and an equal sign next to it, senior leadership deals with basically strategy. It's the strategic level of organization. The middle of that pyramid, we would write down the word ops. And ops equals the word process. In the bottom of that pyramid, we could write down tactical, and tactical equals the word procedure. Now that's important to coming back to answer Mike's question for all of our audience today. So at the top of the model is strategy, and strategy is where basically strategic thinking and policies and vision and et cetera, and that's our senior leaders. Then the middle of this is ops, and ops deals with processes, and that's usually where mid-management is, your question. And then below, that's the word tactical at the bottom of this pyramid. And if tactical's at the bottom, tactical equals the procedures, all of the HOWs. That's where your frontline staff and employees are. So it makes for a good person in the middle to be, in essence, a supervisor. Then think of the pyramid. Person who's going to be a good supervisor should, number one, understand tactically how to do the job that they're leading. So if you, in essence, are great at doing the job and I'm okay at doing the job, and I get promoted, everyone on the team is going to go, this is stupid. I mean, Mike's the rock star. He knows how to do it. He's our subject matter expert, SME. He gets passed over and Magee gets promoted. Okay, this is a potential nightmare. Now, we can solve that one, but that's how these problems start.
Yes.
So if I now get promoted to be a supervisor and I'm not the rock star, then how I become better is recognizing who on my team is the rock star. And whenever possible, I want to defer to Michael. I want to bring you into conversations. I want to tee up something in a meeting and have you lead it. See, I don't always have to be the subject matter expert as I rise higher into an organization to be successful. But at least if I know who the SMEs are, not based upon rhetoric or favoritism or nepotism, but legitimacy. And then I ask that person to give me advice or give us advice. The organization's always moving forward at the end of the day. So a good supervisor needs to be an SME on that which they are immediately being promoted from, which is the tacticals, the actions of what the job implies. They should be relatively an effective communicator, and we can build on that skill set. They need to be an effective listener. We can build on that skill set. They need to be an effective delegator. We can build on that skill set. They need to be good at including and enabling and empowering the people on their team, and we can build on those skill sets. They need to be effective at making their own decisions, so I don't have to always be going to the boss above to make a decision, and we can build on those skill sets. So a lot of the skills that a person needs as they start to ascend upward, we can develop that. That's never the challenge.
Okay. So what is the challenge?
The challenge is getting your ego and arrogancy out of the way to do what you need to do to grow your people. The one thing we do in business is we spend an obscene amount of money to train people from a compliance standpoint to do their job, whatever that means. To know how to run the tractor, the assembly line, use the computer, fill out the Excel spreadsheet. So we spend zillions of hours and dollars training people at the bottom of this pyramid on the functionality of how to do their job. And no one ever debates that. But when you start to ascend upward in that pyramid, and now you actually need equal or more training time and investment in you on the interpersonal skill side, the management skill side, the leadership skill side, the human capital skill side. It's amazing how many organizations start nickel and diming there, cutting back there, eliminating there, and they wonder why they have mediocre rising to the top. Well, I just gave you the clue.
And I love that phrase, ego and arrogance. Well, once again, boss, we've done it to ourselves. We're at the end of our allocated time. It does fly by with you. Real quick, you're on stage. You've done that a few times. You just did it, I think, yesterday, if I remember. Thousands of people there, C-suite, your bread and butter. When you leave the stage after the standing ovation, everybody wants your autograph and do the selfie with you. What's 2 to 3 things you want to make sure that they take back to their office and they put into play?
And that's a great question, Michael. I operate off of the word legacy. If you're a parent and you have kids, your legacy is not just your children. That's the mislead. The legacy is, what do your kids go and do next? Who do they influence? So from the standpoint of you and I, from this C-suite consultative advisory role we get the honor of playing in, or when I get a chance to engage people to share human capital performance development ideas, the word legacy is, when I leave that stage, to your question, have I motivated them? That's one, but more so the motivation, because that's a bunch of BS on the planet. There's a whole lot of motivational speakers that we love. Oh, wow, that was great. You know, a week later, there's no impact on the planet. What a misuse of time, money, and energy. So the legacy is not that I just motivate you and excite you to do, finish a sentence any way you want. I want to give you tools to be able to do whatever that sentence is. Is that do to become more strategic, more forecast, look over the horizon, create a bigger, better business for all of your team to be able to experience tomorrow? Or is it developing your people? Is it freeing you up? Is it giving you the tools to make better decisions? That, you know, how to do revenue generation, sell more, sell better, sell deeper, all of those elements. So that's one response to your question. Did I give you some actual tangible tools that you can actually use? And what's the legacy of that? How's it going to grow? And did I excite you to want to re-become that learner that we all were when we were children? We all were fascinated about learning at some level. But as we get older through adolescence and young adult and middle age, whatever that means, for a lot of us, we get either too busy and forget we need it, or we have it beat out of us and we don't get a chance to go to it. So it becomes something that's not even in our head, it's foreign. But again, you know, Benjamin Franklin made the comment, the person who empties their purse into their head will never be bankrupt. You should always be a learner. Your organization should be a learning organization. If we're always learning, we're always growing. When you're no longer learning, you're dying.
Right on target. And as you and I talked, some people, they tease me. He says, Mike, you are always excited, you're enthusiastic, and you just want to talk about safety and safety culture and what we're doing. I says, yeah. I says, if you're not excited and enthusiastic about what you're doing, how's that continue to be fun for you? And candidly,
absolutely.
How do you leave anything? How do you make a difference? Real quick in summary before we get out of here. This is Dr. Jeffrey Magee. You got to check out his book, The Trajectory Code, on the Player Capability Index Model, where it can take you. Look at what companies, they're actually holding themselves back from excellence, the way they're bringing their people up. Right? I love the phrase mental and physical calluses. You got to kind of earn the stripes before you can see where you're going to go. Have the courage to avoid the ego and arrogance that can get in your way from learning and being able to achieve your level best. And in turn, you're going to have an incredible legacy. Dr. Magee, once again, thank you so much for being with us. I am humbled to be in the same planet with you. You are truly in a league of your own, and you are to be commended on your courage and your commitment to help businesses excel.
Thank you, Michael.
God bless you. Have a great day. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this week's episode of Safety Culture Solutions, brought to you by Safety Culture Strategies. Please reach out to me. You can reach me at scstrat.com. Office is 702-780-1410. That is my real hair, by the way. Or you can send us an email at mike@scstrat.com. Until next time, enjoy your safety culture journey because it never ends, and be safe out there.